Hello everyone, it's Mr. Pierce. This is part 2 of today's lesson. I just previewed the other one and I noticed it was sideways. What a treat. Hopefully you're able to follow along. If you look at this part, it says complete the area model. Now we've done area models before. So when we look at this first one in number 15, the easiest thing to put in front would be 60. So then when we break down the 35, we know that that is 3 10s and 5 1s. So in the box, we will go ahead and just multiply those. So we're going to go 60 times 3 10s is 30. Now if we do that again and we look at the front end, 6 times 3 is 18. Add 2 zeros. Answer 1,800 for that part of the partial product. In the second box, we're going to go 60 times 5. Well, 5 times 6 is 30, so 60 times 5 is 300. Now we would add those two numbers together, and we would end up with 2,100 for our answer. In number 16, we have 50 times 55. So in front, I put the 50 because that's the easiest number to multiply by. This first 5 here is going to be 5 10s. And the other 5 is going to be 5 1s. So now we just, in the box, do what it says. 50 times 5 10s, that's the same as saying 50 times 50. Well, 5 times 5 is 25. So 50 times 50 is 2,500. Plus, in the second box, we're going to go 50 times the 5. Again, 5 times 5 is 25 and add 1 0. So that would be 250 if we add those numbers. Now again, if you're having trouble and you cannot do it in your head, go ahead and stack them up. Okay, so we can go ahead and stack them like this. We add them together. We of course get 0, 5, 7, and 2. So our answer, 2,750. The next part is a review of what we did yesterday with distributive property. And again, when we see 65 times 5, we say that 6 is a 60. So we could go 60 times 5, and then we can go 5 times 5. And once you get good at this, you'll be able to do it in your head. So 60 times 5, of course, 6 times 5 is 30. So 60 times 5 is 300. 300 plus 5 times 5 is 25. Our answer, 325. For the next one, we are doing 32 times 30. We can still use distributive property. This 3 is really a 30. So in the first one, we can go 30 times 30. And then we would go in the second set of parentheses, 2 times 30. If we do this, 3 times 3 is 9. So 30 times 30 is 900. Plus 2 times 30 is 60. Making our answer 960. On the next page, we're going to start with practicing associative property. If you remember, associative property allows us to be able to change how they are grouped to make it easier. When we look at 35 times 20 times 5, multiplying 35 times 20 might not be the easiest solution. But we can see if we can regroup it, we might be able to go 20. Oops, I clicked on the wrong one there. So we can possibly go 20 times 5 first, and then what we get there, multiply times 35. And if we do that, 20 times 5 we should know is 100. Times 35 would end up being 3,500, or 3,500. When we look at the next one, the way it is written is probably the easiest way to do that one, because we know when we go 2 times 5, we get 10. If we multiply 6.75 times 10, that means each digit is going to get 10 times larger. If we looked at this first number, this 6, well, 6 times 10 would be 60. So I should realize that this number is going to be 67.5. We might also remember that when we multiply by 10, we could move the digit one place to the right. So when we see it, our answer is indeed 67.5, or 67 and 5/10. For the next part, we are asked to do the standard algorithm. So I would start out in the first one multiplying by 9. So if I went 9 times 2, I get 18. So I would write down the 8 and regroup the 1. Then I would go 9 times 8 is 72, plus the 1 that I regrouped is 73. I like to then erase that number that I regrouped and get rid of that before I go on to the next digit. Now when I go to the next digit, what I will notice is that 1 is not a 1, it's a 10. So because it is a 10, I must start out by putting a placeholder 0 right here. Now I can just multiply each digit on top by 1. So I go 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 8 is 8, and I add the two lines together. 8 plus 0 is 8, 3 plus 2 is 5, 7 plus 8 is 15, making that answer 1,558. Going right on to the next one, we would start out with multiplying each digit on top by 5. 5 times 4 is 20, so we write down our 0 and regroup our 2. 5 times 5 would then be 25 plus the 2 I regrouped, again, is 27. I'm going to erase that number that I regrouped, that 2, before I go on. And I'm also going to go and I'm going to put a placeholder 0 right here because the 4 that we are about to multiply by is really a 40. So 4 times 4 would be 16. Write down our 6, regroup our 1. 4 times 5 would be 20 plus 1 is 21. So I would write that down. And now I would add those together. I would get 0. 7 plus 6 is 13. Write down the 3, regroup our 1. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus the 1 that I regrouped makes 4. And 2 plus nothing is 2, making that answer 2,430. Looking at the next problem, we see 15 tens times 8 tens. 15 tens, we should remember, is the same as saying 15 times 10, so that would be 150. 8 tens is the same as saying 8 times 10, which would be 80. Now, if you notice, I have a 0 right here. I do not need to multiply all of the digits on top by that 0 because it's really part of 80. So I can just go ahead and write that 0 down. Now I will go and I will multiply each digit on top by the 8. So I would go, first of all, 8 times the 0 is 0. 8 times 5 is 40. So I write down the 0 and regroup the 4. 8 times 1 is 8, plus the 4 makes 12. Our answer to that problem is 12,000. In the next problem, we see 12 tens. Well, that's the same as 12 times 10, which would be 120. And we are going to multiply it by 16 ones. So 16 ones, of course, is just 16. So I'm going to write a 1, and I'm going to write the 6 down. All right, so I'm going to start out by multiplying each digit on top by 6. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 2 is 12, so I write down the 2 and regroup the 1. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So that first part would be 720. Again, I'm going to erase the number I regrouped. And now I'm going to go over to the 1. The 1 is really a 10. So I have to put a placeholder 0 there to show that. Now I go 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. We're going to add these two lines together. And we get 0, 2, 9, and 1, making our answer 1,920. Looking at the next problem, it says Olivia has 11 groups of red marbles and 5 groups of green marbles. There are 15 marbles in each group. How many marbles does she have? So what we're trying to find here is the total number of marbles. So one possible way of solving this is a numerical expression of like this. We could go, okay, she has 11 groups of red marbles. And there are 15 in each of those groups. So we could go 11 times 15. Okay. And then we could say, okay, she also had 5 groups of green marbles, and there are 15 in each of those groups. So we could figure out which each of those are and then add those together. That's one possible numerical expression you could use for this problem. But there is an easier way for this one. What I would do is simply find out how many total groups she has. So she has 11 groups of red marbles and 5 groups of green marbles. That is a total of 16 groups of marbles. So an easy way to do this is to simply go 16 times 15. Okay? Either way, you will get the same product. So let me go ahead and solve this one. If I went ahead and multiplied, 5 times 6 is 30, so I write down the 0, and of course regroup the 3. Now I'm going to go 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8. Again, I like to go ahead and erase the number I regrouped at this point. Now I'm going to go over to the 1. That 1 is not a 1, it's a 10. It's 15, so it's a 10. So I'm going to put my placeholder 0 first before I multiply. And now I'm going to multiply each digit on top by 1. 1 times 6 is 6. Nothing to regroup. 1 times 1 is 1. We're going to add those two lines together, and we get 0 plus 0 is 0. 8 plus 6 is 14. Write down the 4 and regroup, and we get a 2. So our answer, 240. I hope you find this video useful. It's very similar to what you're going to be doing for today's homework.